Thank you, Mr. Lovelace. Superintendent's report, and I will turn that over to Dr. Melton, our Superintendent of the Year.
Ms. Hammond, thank you so much. And I have had the opportunity to communicate with a variety of groups since the award was presented, and I am consistent to say that the award may have my name imprinted on it, but it is a story of School District 5, of all the staff members that have contributed to this unprecedented year, and the board for their continued encouragement and communication of expectations and support. So this is a year that we definitely probably could not celebrate enough, Mrs. Hammond. We have certainly risen to the challenge and exceeded. And before I jump into the reentry report, I'd like to have the opportunity, as Mr. Lovell said earlier, this, of course, is a week of graduation for our students that we are anticipating on Friday and Saturday to include inclement weather plans. But Ms. Goggins has even met with the National Weather Service as of today, and likely make that a daily event of hers and Dr. Harris's. So our staff has worked tirelessly with partners to make sure that our class of 21 can have an experience that will be memorable and celebratory. So I'll pause to say thank you to the staff and our partners across our Lexington County and Richland County partners for all that they've done to get us prepared for Friday and Saturday success. Our staff is just truly exceptional, and I'm just grateful for their involvement this year, their voices, and their contributions to a year that we can certainly celebrate. And with the celebrations, as Ms. Hammond alluded to earlier, I'd like to make sure that we go on record again today to congratulate Sarah Gams, the District 5 Teacher of the Year. That's the reigning South Carolina Teacher of the Year. And then Amy Carter, of course, was announced during the month of May from Chapin High School to represent School District 5 as the State Teacher of the Year. And then, of course, Dr. Gerald Gary, our high school, South Carolina Association of School Administrators Principal of the Year. And then we've had other leaders who have stepped up to the state level of Anna Miller and Dr. Angie Slatton, who have led their roundtables with SCASA and taken on more responsibilities to be influential voices assisting public education across the state. So I salute all these names, and those that were not mentioned that have certainly made a positive impact. I thank you, which leads into this reentry update number 18. And you will see with this presentation there is a recommendation regarding our ESSER 3 funding that we're working towards. Ms. Goggins and team have been working very hard to make sure that this message is communicated in an efficient, effective way. You all have seen these guiding principles for every presentation that we've done thus far. So these principles are nothing new. If I could advance, I'm not sure if our clickers are competing. There it is. The 5 principles that we have outlined here, we've been consistent to use those. And then, of course, the next slide of our operations, we have used these for our decision-making, always with the foundation of safety and how we were trying to advance my priority number 5 to support a physical, social, and emotional safe environment where staff can work and students can learn. So tonight, Ms. Goggins is going to be the voice of this next portion, but of course she is representative of all the work of School District 5 so that we could offer this update that's a preliminary reentry plan for the 21-22 academic year. Ms. Goggins.
Thank you, Dr. Melton, board members, members of the public. Thank you for this opportunity to share our plans with you tonight. The focus and goal of the presentation tonight is sharing our preliminary plans for the upcoming school year 2021-2022, and we would reiterate the word preliminary. These are the reentry plans as we know them today, and we will certainly come back as we approach the school year and share more details and updates because things continue to change and evolve very rapidly. So we're also presenting tonight as part of a requirement for ESSER 3 funds to develop a plan for the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. If Ms. Rawls were speaking at the podium to this presentation tonight, she would likely note the very short window districts were given to submit the reentry plans for ESSER 3 funds by this month. However, we were told that we should update those plans, and we're given some further guidance, which we will share in this presentation. So tonight we will share the preliminary plan in 3 parts, covering instruction, health and safety, and operations. And we would like to note that many of the topics we cover in the presentation were required areas that we were asked to address per the state form for submitting the reentry plans for ESSER 3. The first section is our instructional reentry plan for the 2021-22 school year. The State Forum asks that we provide a description of instructional plan for the upcoming school year, and School District 5 plans to offer in-person 5-day instruction. This will be offered at the start of the school year, and the district's flexible, innovative virtual education program was approved by the school board as a choice option for the next school year. The district also plans to continue its designation as an e-learning district as approved by the State Education Oversight Committee and the State Department of Education. And of course, we will continue to work with our state and federal agencies and other groups to determine criteria and guidelines for the safe operations of our schools. The district is also asked to provide a description of maintaining health and safety. So in accordance with a school board resolution, our reentry plans as we know them today will include that face coverings will be encouraged to be worn by students and teachers. Staff members will be strongly encouraged to wear a face covering while on district property and conducting business on behalf of the district, also in accordance with our school board policy. Students and staff will be asked to complete daily self-screenings before reporting to school. We would note that this is always the case as infectious diseases are a constant. And hand washing and other preventative measures to mitigate infectious illnesses will be in place. The State Forum asked districts to address the topics of contract tracing and vaccination options. Therefore, we plan to share that contract tracing will continue, and we will share that the district will partner with healthcare providers to educate staff and families about testing and vaccination options in the area. An example of this is we recently shared a flyer with staff and families about a vaccination clinic that was hosted by a local healthcare provider. So we will be partnering with local healthcare providers to share some educational materials. The final slide covers a description of operational procedures. The state plan asks districts to address a plan for physical distancing. We will share in our form submission that facilities will be optimized to allow for social distancing when possible. The district will implement strategies to clean and maintain healthy facilities, and the state submission form also asks that we include a plan for improving ventilation in schools. Finally, the district will update its transportation and student nutrition protocols in accordance with state and federal requirements. So again, these were the 3 sections: instruction, health and safety, and operations, that generally cover the areas we were asked to address in the form we must submit regarding ESSER 3 funds. We continue to develop those plans and will bring forward any updates as needed. Considerations. There are a few considerations we want to point out. Districts are required to review and, as appropriate, revise their safe return to in-person instruction plans. The administration will make its plans and updates available to the public through public presentations like the one tonight, direct communications with our staff and families, and web postings, as we have throughout the entire reentry process this year. Public input is also important and will be a part of our plan. I would like to share that Ms. Rawls and I participated in a virtual meeting led by state officials recently and received some clarifications on the requirements of public input. According to state officials, public input can include emails that board members and or staff receive, public participation at board meetings, and other means of receiving input. For our reentry plans we must submit this month, we were told that the input from the current school year would suffice as long as we had records and documentation. And we know we have records and documentation of the public participation and emails that we have received this year. So we will utilize that for submitting the plan this month. And the district will seek further public input on the reentry plans before the start of the school year for students. And we will seek public input on ESSER 3 funds. We feel there's been some confusion about input on reentry plans for ESSER funds that are due in June versus the input on the ESSER funds that are due in August. The input required for ESSER funds is not due this month, and we do plan to seek some public input on ESSER 3 funds, as you've probably seen some other districts start to do. And then one final note, Dr. Melton mentioned that I am a spokesperson for this reentry plan, but there are many individuals and many groups that have had input on our plans, and our executive staff members will be happy to answer questions tonight. To summarize, School District 5 plans to provide 5-day in-person instruction for the 2021-2022 school year, while providing health and safety protocols and reviewing plans in partnership with local, state, and federal agencies. And the administration recommends that the school board approve the district's preliminary reentry plan as outlined in this report. And with that, Dr. Melton, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Goggins. Ms. Hammond, I suspect there'll be some questions, so the staff and I will be prepared to answer questions from the board.
Okay. Any questions on our school reentry overview?
Yeah.
Mr. Loveth.
Dr. Melton, I noticed in a communique that was sent out that the ESSER 2 committee had been, I guess for no better word, had been disbanded as of recently. Is that right?
I don't know that the word disbanded was used, but the ESSER 2 committee has accomplished its work, and the board has approved the plan that we have worked towards. Ms. Rawls, of course, is monitoring those funds, but we've been trying to use a variety of committees to include all advisories and the additional layer of an ESSER committee, which the board, of course, saw a slide of those that chose to participate, not all those that were invited.
Will that same committee be reorganized for the ESSER 3 communications? And
one thing we've learned, Mr. Lovelace, if nothing else from this year, is as the criteria have changed and the templates have been developed, it has helped us to revisit the purpose and how we do things. So there may be some continuity. For example, on that committee, Michelle Eichelberger, the District 5 Support Employee of the Year, Amy Carter, the District 5 Teacher of the Year. It's likely that you'll see some consistency with continuity of people with those kinds of roles and responsibilities. But I could not speak for all the participants and their availability. We would certainly extend invitations, and those that are available to contribute their time, we will take that opportunity and extend invitations to the advisories the way we have.
Okay, the question I have then is, I think the public has been asking for more members of the general population to be included in the ESSER committee, and they were shocked to find that was only one member that we saw, on there, and that they would like somebody to speak to the fact that they need more participation from the public included on the committee. So I would like, to ask you to please do that and have more members of the public involved in this, because they are as heightened concern about that.
So the committee that was there, like you're saying, they've done their work.
Yes, ma'am.
And it may be that there'll be, if I heard Ms. Scoggins, there'll be more public opportunity for public to sign up.
Well, we're pleased, Ms. Hammond, and for all the board to hear in the community as well. Our reentry address book, who knows how many hundreds of emails Ms. Goggins and staff have processed since last summer. So if people are looking for an invitation to be at a table, then I would encourage them to reach out directly to me and volunteer their time. The way we have done other invitations, and I'll use Business Advisory as an example, during one of the advisory meetings with them, I asked if we could have a minimum of 2 that could commit. I'd like to have at least 3, and that group made some self-nominations of who could be available, because we explained to them the structure of the time that we were looking at. Mm-hmm. So we understand that people who have jobs and responsibilities and schedules will not always be available. But for the value of the work, it needs to be consistent people that can be involved rather than those that can come to meetings when they're available. We need those that understand so that they can pick up where we are and move forward. But as Ms. Goggins has gone through, and I'll go backwards to show these kinds of templates, this is new language that's now in the expectation that she has taken language from, and I'm fortunate to say that because of the work we've done, much of what we've done can be used towards this compliance with very little else expected to make sure that we're in route. But the amount of money that we're going to be receiving, of course, is much higher. When ESSER 1 came out, we didn't know there was going to be 2. When 2 came out, we weren't sure there was going to be 3, and we didn't know how much 3 was going to be. So if there are people in the public that would like to be involved, they're welcome to send an email to to Ms. Goggins or to me, and we'll be glad to consider their availability of how they'd like to represent.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions on the presentation? Ms.?
Yes, it notes it's a requirement of ESSER, ARP and ESSER 3. So I was curious, I mean, obviously, we're still a ways away from August, and things can change. So what's the process if we want to change this? Do we need to file an amended plan, or how would that work?
Based upon the information we have thus far, you see that we have preliminary here. We are going to be watching. We don't want to invest time and effort and energy towards things that may change. And so as we get updates or as information changes, we'll bring it back to the board. We understand that this will not be an approval process the way some others have been. There will be a preview of our application or of our submission to the department. But Ms. Rawls, anything that I've omitted that you'd like to make sure is included from the webinars that you participated with?
I just wanted to reiterate what you said, Dr. Melton. This is not, the State Department's not approving our reentry plan. It is just part of the requirement of the ARP Act that we provide this. It can be updated. It's required to be updated at a minimum of every 6 months, but we can update it more often if needed.
So, Dr. Melton, do we need action on this since we've got action is necessary? Do you need this approved? Or-
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I was going to make the motion.
Oh, okay. You have a question first. Excuse me. Yes, I didn't see it.
I guess for clarification, just to make sure that I understand, because there were some specific things on this reentry plan, but there was no talk of quarantines. And so I assumed that that would be something that we would follow. We've been following DHEC guidelines on that, and we would continue to do that. And it would be whatever they suggest for quarantining, since it wasn't specifically mentioned in this.
Apologies. I've gone back to this slide of health and safety reentry, and the description of maintaining health and safety. You notice the next to the bottom bullet, contact tracing will continue. Again, we're trying to make sure that we have compliance. We've discussed dashboard, and we've reviewed the motions of the board to make sure that we look towards the future. At the start of the academic year of the 21-22 year, we may bring back some things to the board, ask you for some continued suspensions to some policies. It may be an update to see where you all were with your thinking of some motions that you've taken previously, if you'd like to suspend some of those decisions been made in the past. But based upon our understanding, we will have to continue things in compliance with DHEC and CDC guidance. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That it for questions? Ms. Hines?
I would like to make the motion that we approve the school district's preliminary plan. I don't see it on the screen anymore.
There it
The
is.
preliminary
Plan.
reentry plan as outlined in the report provided by Ms. Goggins.
Okay. Is there a second? Ms. Gardner seconds. All those in favor? Okay.
I had a question.
I'm sorry,
Is
Mr.
this on
White.
the, is this supposed to be an action item?
Yeah, I just asked that, and she told me yes. Dr. Melton
I'm sorry. I
gave
was
me that
reading.
guidance. That's okay.
Okay.
So is your vote yes?
Yes.
So that'll be 7 with no opposed. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Goggins. 2021, 2022 District Strategic Plan update. Well, through 2025, 2026 District Strategic Plan update.
Ms. Hammond and Board, Director Holden has made his way to the podium.
Okay.
He could have class and offer assessments this evening if that were the will of the board. This certainly has been of interest and high priority to his leadership and work. The board did receive a lengthier presentation than he'll be presenting this evening. We wanted to make sure that we provided context. Of course, this year has been such an unusual, unprecedented year, and then let's make sure that we're monitoring strategic plan as another responsibility that we're updating. So I commend Mr. Holden for the leadership that he and his team have provided and the many volunteers that have participated. And tonight he's prepared to offer an update to the board regarding our strategic plan process thus far. Director Holden.
Thank you very much, Dr. Melton and the board. As Dr. Melton has mentioned, I'm here to update you tonight on the strategic plan process for the next 5 years, the next 5-year plan. We're going to look at some preliminary findings of our needs assessment process, talk about the recommendations of the committees that were involved in that, and also discuss our next steps in the strategic plan process. First, as a reminder, all districts are required to have a strategic plan that lasts 5 years. Normally for our district, that aligns with our reaccreditation timeline. Of course, with Cognia changing its reaccreditation standards and its overall standards for institutions and systems, that reaccreditation visit has been postponed until 2023-24. So our district has elected to undertake an internal needs assessment process in advance of that to ensure we have a 5-year plan heading into our next cycle that is reflective of the current needs of the school district rather than waiting for that reaccreditation visit to occur that year. So who participated in our needs assessment process? In total, we had 69 different representatives serving on the different committees. That included parents, support staff, teachers, administrators, and members of the community. Each geographic region of the district was represented. Each school was represented, and we also included some special situations such as adult education. The center was included, and 5 were also included in order to make sure that we had appropriate representation from all the different programs and different things that we do here in the school district. On the screen now, you can see a list of the folks who were involved, representing all those different constituencies, and you also see an asterisk by the team leaders. We did have several folks who were involved in that. Lucy Bailey, Kelly Brown were involved with the School Climate Committee. Mr. Al Presley and Ms. Tina McCaskill were involved in the Student Achievement Committee. Dr. Reggie Wicker was involved in our Teacher Administrator Quality Committee, and Virginia Tate, Ms. Virginia Tate was involved in our Gifted and Talented Committee. So we had representation from different departments there involved in the process of the needs assessment in terms of facilitating that for our community, but you can see the other representatives that were involved in that process here as well. So I've alluded to this, but there are 4 key areas that we look at with strategic planning. 3 of those are required by the regulation that you see listed in front of you. They include school climate, student achievement, and teacher administrator quality. There's a 4th area that I also mentioned, which is gifted and talented. Gifted and talented is we're required to have a plan under a different regulation, but that plan has been merged with the strategic plan as part of state practices since about 2018. And so we included that as part of our needs assessment practice because it's going to be a part of our strategic plan in line with state practices there as well. What we're going to do next is we're going to walk through area by area. We're going to start with that school climate area, then do student achievement, then do teacher administrator quality, and then do gifted and talented. And what we're going to do with each one is we're going to look at the proposed goals that we're looking at for the next 5 years, and then follow that up with some recommended strategies. Now, of course, in your packet that you received in your board brief, there's more information that is included there and that supplements some of the material that we're covering tonight. However, the key thing we want you to know is that you have the goals that are listed there in the PowerPoint, and you're going to see the strategies that follow those. That is not intended to be an all-inclusive list of strategies, but those are strategies that were recommended by the committees that participated in the needs assessment process. So the first goal we have reflects school climate and the ability to focus on a safe and supportive social and physical environment. The Needs Assessment Committee looked at that information and identified the State Department's annual survey to parents, teachers, and students as a key data point that would allow us to assess our progress in that area and propose different goals related to that for parents, for students, and for teachers. And again, that measure comes from the annual State Department survey that is issued every spring, again, to parents, students, and teachers. The committee also recommended the district develop strategies in 5 areas that would support that goal. And the way the plan is set up is that you have a goal, you have overall strategies that are underneath the goal and support the goal, and then you have specific action steps that address the strategy. Okay? So the 5 strategies that were identified by the committee were family engagement, social and emotional learning, positive behavioral interventions and supports, bullying, and school safety. So the committee recommended areas and strategies related to those 5 areas in order to support those goals of parent, student, and teacher satisfaction with the social and physical environment. The next area is student achievement, and you can see the first goal that we have there related to a challenging curricula involves a growth measure that comes from our NWEA MAP growth assessment, and it involves ensuring the median student conditional growth percentile is at or above 2 key measures there, 56 for math and 55 for reading. And then we also looked at the graduation rate for high schools. And I apologize, I had 55 for math and 56 for reading. I misspoke there. We looked at the graduation rate for our high schools, increasing that from 90.06 to 91, and then looking at the percentage of students who are college or career ready, remaining at or above 78% through 2026. And your packet outlines more information about that college and career readiness indicator. The other piece that we're looking at here are two different strategies that were recommended. The committee recommended strategies that address the needs of two specific subgroups in our district, or two specific groups of students. Those groups are multi-language learners and our students with disabilities. The committee felt it was important to develop strategies that address those specific groups of students, in addition to other potential strategies the district may develop. So those came out of the committee recommendations. As it relates to teacher administrator quality, the district committee recommended three key measures there, some related to recruitment and some related to retention, some related to development, with goals and strategies as a mix of those things. So the first goal relates to teacher retention and increasing the teacher retention rate from 90.24 to 91.3. There are two other measures there that are included. The teacher satisfaction with working conditions, which again comes from that annual State Department survey, being a key measure that might help us anticipate teacher retention and address teacher needs. And the third one there about teacher satisfaction with professional development, being a key measure of how we develop teachers, whether or not they're satisfied with the opportunities they're being provided to learn and grow within School District 5. The committee also recommended strategies related to the recruitment and retention of teachers from diverse backgrounds, and as well as continuing the range of professional development choices and programs that were offered, and as a means of ensuring teacher development occurs, as a means of ensuring teacher retention, and as a means of ensuring the highest quality teachers and faculty in the state, and keeping our already great teachers at or above where they are right now. We've got a great group, and we wanted to continue to support them and their thoughts on the professional development programs in the district. The last measure is gifted and talented. And with this one, we looked at two different areas. The key things I would summarize them as are access and achievement. So looking at how do we increase opportunities, and also how do we ensure we're meeting the needs of the students who are in those programs. So the first goal there is very similar to what you saw with student achievement, except it focuses on a specific group of students. These students growing at or above or starting the year at or above the 90th percentile, and their MAP median student growth percentile of that group of students. The second goal relates to the advanced placement passage rate, being at or above 68%. And then the final goal there relates to the proportion of students who are coded as Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, or two or more races, increasing the proportion of those students who are served in our AGP programs, our honors programs, AP, IB, or dual enrollment courses, increasing that by 2026. As it relates to that, the committee's recommended that we focus on two key strategies there, which are addressing local identification criteria. The state has its own criteria for identifying students in gifted and talented programs. So the committee recommended we look at ways we can locally identify students. And then in addition to that, as the identification criteria, looking at how we provide supports to students in those programs and what resources they are offered to remain successful and remain engaged in the AP, IB, dual enrollment, honors, and AGP courses. Here's a summary of the different areas. You can see we've got one for school climate, student achievement, teacher administrator quality, and gifted and talented. For this slide, the numbers have been taken away, but it's intended as a summary. So you can see school climate, we're focused on the social and physical environment, the opinions and the perceptions of our social and physical environment from teachers, parents, and students. For student achievement, you can see we're looking at the growth of our students, as well as the graduation rate and college or career readiness. For teacher administrator quality, we're focused on teacher retention rate, teacher satisfaction with professional development, and teacher satisfaction with working conditions. And for our GT programs, we're focused on the growth of the students in those programs, the advanced placement passage rate, and increasing opportunities. From here, what we would look at doing, and this is pending board approval of the proposed goals, we would look at developing and drafting strategies that support those goals and the related needs. We would then draft those strategies and bring them back to the board for approval at our August 23rd board meeting. And then the district, following that August 23rd board meeting, would go into the steps of identifying and drawing up the specific actions that are related to each of those strategies. Schools will engage in a similar process, which is using their baseline data to set goals, determine appropriate strategies, and develop their own action plans. And that would be done in a similar way that the district has worked with a variety of stakeholders on this process. Schools will undertake a similar process at their level to ensure they are meeting the needs of their students in their building. And that concludes our presentation on strategic planning and what we're looking to do over the next 5 years here in School District 5. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Melton.
Ms. Hammond, I'm sure there'll be questions, so Director Holden, staff, and I will be available to answer questions that the board may have.
I will entertain questions, but I'd like to just tell you, great job. I think it's very explanatory, and I can remember, I'm old enough to think I remember when we first started these strategic plans that my kids were at Irmo High, and I know we worked hard on this, and it's a lot of work into this with your staff, and I just want to thank you for this work, because it's really how we reach goals that if we don't write them down and know how our strategies are going to work, we can't do it.
We appreciate that.
Let's have some questions, and our...
My turn?
Yes, your
Okay.
turn.
Yeah. Looking over this, to me, there's one key group that's not even mentioned here, and that's the career readiness of students to obtain employment. And I don't understand, what the goals are. That seems to me that that's where we need to focus some attention on.
Mm-hmm. So under our student achievement area, one of our goals overall deals with college or career readiness. That's a measure identified by the state that contains several ways that a student could be identified as either college or career ready. And so we've got a few measures there that like SAT, ACT, IB, AP, I'm leaving off one, I'm sure. And then we have career readiness measures as well, where students meet a certain criteria where they can engage in, they can be a CTE, a CATE completer. They could be a student who meets a certain proficiency score on the Ready to Work assessment. They could meet a certain proficiency score on the ASVAB for armed services. They could also, there's a few different processes, I think work-based learning. I don't want to speak offhandedly and misrepresent what the different pieces are. But what the state does there is as the students complete any one of those criteria to be identified as college or career ready, the student meets that criteria. The state has deemed them to be at or above the proficiency level required to be college or career ready. And so that being a goal, what we would see possibly there is if the board deems it appropriate, or if our next phase of this with strategy development deems it appropriate, there would be a strategy potentially related to the CTE programs, to our CATE programs, and the work we do there that would help ensure not only are we focused on college readiness, but career readiness. That's a possibility, but the intent of that measure is to capture both of those ideas into one.
Can we capture it in one intent, which would be career readiness, and look at and reward those that are seeking employment, out of high school? Because that seems to me that we're focusing a lot of attention on different areas, and I think we're underserving that. And I would ask you to please go back and look at some goals specifically for measuring that.
Is it?
Any other questions? Ms. Huddle?
I have a question on the climate, and I saw one of the, I have to go back to the slide, but it mentioned positive behavior intervention and supports.
Mm-hmm.
I've received a lot of phone calls and calls lately from teachers and students, teachers and parents, I should say, who find it confusing. And so I guess the question is are we doing PBIS now? And if so, how does that work with our existing student code of conduct?
I'll let Dr. Melton decide how we want to answer that one.
And that's a question
Instruction.
both Mr. Giuliano and Dr. Harris would have different portions of it. PBIS has been, for some historical context, the advanced ed visit from 2015 led us towards more consistency. In 2010, one of the improvement priorities was that School District 5 start looking, and of course, there was concern at that point, and Dr. Harris, make sure that my years do not get away from me, but we've looked at data and we're concerned about the referral rates. We were concerned about suspension rates, expulsion, concerned about referrals to special education, and positive behavior intervention support was the model that School District 5 decided to pursue. We started at the elementary level and then worked up. Originally, the first few phases were on some of the expectations and some of the extrinsic community culture kinds of things. But we've been fortunate with Lucy Bailey and other behavior interventionists in the last 3-4 years that we have used it to go deeper into the processes The behavior handbook, Dr. Harris still leads a committee every year looking at the behavior handbook with any updates that we need to have. For example, when Julian became very distracting a few years ago, that was one of the behaviors that were added into that. So the behavior handbook is a fluid, dynamic document that our administrators, especially our assistant principals, are directly involved with. Dr. Harris, what have I forgotten that you'd like to add from your lens of discipline? And then Mr. Giuliano, from the instructional lens, what would you like to add for that, for Ms. Huddle's question?
I think you've covered it well. It is a very fluid document, that the discipline code. Ms. Kelly Brown is certainly a major part of that and working directly with our schools and many of our administrators. But it is something, as current trends continue to come about, we certainly make sure that we include those to make certain that we are addressing them appropriately, effectively, and efficiently whenever they do occur. So that is a very fluid document, and it's something we look at annually, and we're making note of throughout the course of the year as things occur.
And Dr. Harris, for clarity, PBIS does not suspend the behavior handbook. The behavior handbook is still in application. PBIS is a layer of expectations and community of school culture. Mr. G, you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Dr. Melton. I'll just add that PBIS a lot of times is known as those extrinsic rewards for students, but it's really trying to look at the intrinsic rewards as well. And then also trying the classroom procedures, the hallway procedures, school-wide procedures tie into PBIS for teachers and for students. And then also it really has our triage teams, which take place at all of our schools, that have different professionals that explore the students about behavior, but then also the instructional side as well through that triage committee. Really trying to look, too, at the MTSS approach, where we look at instruction and look at behavior together when discussing students. So PBIS a lot of times is seen as those intrinsic rewards system, but it's really much more than that as you get into the school-wide procedures, the triage committees, and much more.
So typically it's people that use PBIS for extrinsic, they don't understand the many complicated variables that go into that. And I would be remiss if Sarah Wheeler's listening tonight. Kagan is an example of cooperative learning, of how we educate and train students with our expectations of how to work together in small groups or with a partner. And that, too, is a part of PBIS, explaining to students how to use communication skills, problem-solving skills, all while learning together and by socializing together within an environment. But in no way does PBIS take away the behavior handbook expectations. Dr. Harris and Ms. Brown can tell you the behavior handbook is still very active, engaged, and being followed by our school administrators.
So just to clarify, does that mean that, because, I mean, I've heard that there are students who commit violations that are very clear repercussions in the behavior code, but yet that's not what happens, and that it's PBIS interventions are being used outside of the behavior handbook. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I'm just asking, is that happening? And if it is happening, do we need to update our behavior code so that it's congruent?
I would say that behavior code is up to date, and at no time should the behavior handbook not be followed. PBIS does not intervene to give permission not to follow something. Positive behavior is simply that. It is a way that students are held accountable for their behavioral decisions, and that we take the opportunity to educate them of how to work together. And this year is a prime example of what to use when students were learning hybrid and not having that 5-day stamina, or not having a full class size of operations or a full grade level outside at recess, those kinds of things. We have to teach students how to socialize and adjust to those environments. But if there are things that are happening that where the behavior handbook is not being enforced and that parent has approached that principal and has not gotten assistance, then I would encourage that parent to reach out to Dr. Harris so that we could make sure that we offer support and assurance that the behavior handbook is in full effect. Dr. Harris, anything else that you'd like to add that I've not included?
Thank you. That's exactly right. I would in no way share with it that the behavior code is not being followed. And I'll repeat that again. I in no way believe that. And certainly not been supplemented by way of PBIS.
Thank you. Ms. Gardner.
Can you tell me how much professional development there is associated with PBIS, like yearly or monthly or whatever is what kind of things you do, since this document that we talked about that is fluid, how often is that also reiterated to teachers? First question, and second question is, do you get teacher feedback, and do you do it through surveys, or how do you know if it's working in the school level?
Make sure I have those two components, Ms. Gardner. For professional development, it's going to vary. A first-year teacher is going to need a different inception or reception into the profession than a more tenured teacher may need. Those that come in that are new to District 5 are going to need a different kind of introduction to our expectations. So if you looked at the number of hours that staff have used, it's going to vary depending on the need. If we have a staff member who has an improvement plan, Dr. Turner would work directly to make sure that that staff member gets the support that they need. So professional development may be individualized. When we look at the systematic things, Mr. Giuliano and team lead a summer professional development of teams from every school with a focus. And every year we've had an identified focus upon a theme for the year to move our work forward. So you're going to have teams involved with monthly meetings at the district level, also monthly meetings at the school level where there are committees in effect. The committees, of course, are either appointed or selected by their peers so that teachers and staff have a direct opportunity to have their voices heard. When it comes, and I want to make sure that we're not getting these confused. PBIS is not the behavior handbook. Those are different kinds of operations. And Ms. Gardner, as a parent, I'm sure that you have experienced that. Mr. G, when it comes to professional development, what have I omitted that you would like to include?
In addition to the monthly meetings that our PBIS leads have at the district level, our schools have committee meetings as well on Tuesday afternoons. So as those committee meetings take place, there's a PBIS committee at our schools that take place to share information. And as a committee member, your responsibility is to take information back to your team or back to your department to be able to share that information. So there's school-wide professional development at times on PBIS, but then there's also committee meetings that take place on Tuesday afternoons that is brought back as information. But to reiterate what Dr. Melton said, PBIS and the Code of Conduct are separate entities when it comes to professional development and experiences.
Thank you. Is that good, Ms. Gardner? Okay. Anybody else before I go back to Mr. Lovelace? Yes.
So, Dr. Harris, the PBIS in relationship to the Code of Conduct, okay? Now, I've read messages from parents at certain schools and so forth, and I'm confused. Does the Code of Conduct take priority over this process that occurs otherwise? I mean, I'm saying we've got some situations where we have conduct that's outside of the Code of Conduct, and it's not being, according to the parents and to the teachers that we're receiving information from, and it has been brought to you, and we're concerned, or I am, and I know several of these board members are concerned, that there's two standards for this. In other words, you know, the discipline is not being handled evenly, and there's certain, that's what we asked Dr. Kelly Brown, we asked for Dr. Melton for a independent investigation of this, and as far as I know, I've seen one thing that said one of the instances was an isolated incident, but I haven't seen anything that came about because of this inquiry, other than we put an additional hall monitor, and I guess that's an adult that we got one person in the hall and so forth, and then we had other information after that. So I'm concerned that there's two standards here. One of them is for discipline of, the way that the guideline says, and the other one is basically through intervention, and we're not doing the stuff through intervention. We got people staying in the situation, and we're basically punishing the person that's been bullied. And I want to know. I want to know what's going on with that.
Ms.
Mr.
Hammond,
Lovelace,
if I may,
yeah.
I
think
the
this is
purpose
something-
of our presentation was on the
Yes.
district strategic plan. And Mr. Lovelace, there have been some updates. If you've not seen what I've sent, I'd be happy to resend them, or you and I can have a conversation. But we want to make sure that there are going to be behavior issues, and we are in the last week of school. And this is an adjusted calendar where our students experience 5 days a week beginning in February. And that, of course, has affected some of the processing and stabilizing of how students behave. So, Ms. Hammond, if it is of interest to the board that we offer a report about PBIS or the behavior handbook, we can certainly do that. But our purpose tonight that Mr. Holden and team have put together is, I hope that we can celebrate that 69 participants chose to be involved with the draft of this phase of our strategic plan. And I hope the board has seen that the work that we've done has gotten us into compliance, but also in a time to update. And I hope the board can see that we've got some dates that you can expect updates in the near future, which of course includes a lot of work over the summer, this already a shorter summer. So Ms. Hammond, if there's any other
Yeah.
questions about strategic plan, we'll be happy to answer those. And any other updates, we'll be happy to work with the board.
Thank you. And I understand exactly what you're saying. I think this strategic plan, I think your questions are valid, but it's basically another subject that if the board so wants that's certainly a whole nother presentation. I would say one thing, because I do see you're going to bring us, we have next steps for this. You're going to bring strategies that support the goals the administration will be working on, and drafted strategies will be brought back to the board in August 23rd. I was just going to put in my 2 cents for, I'm so glad to see it doesn't have a page, but under school climate, you have got the committee recommended specific strategies and accompanying action steps to address the following areas. I really want to put a circle around bullying, and I will be so anxious to see, as your administration and your groups work to bring us back strategies on that, because I know it's sometimes just a word thrown around and misused as a teacher, I can tell you, in schools, and then again, it's very important to be identified. So I look forward to those strategies, and I'm just so glad to see that in here.
And to clarify that, the committee felt very strongly about having a strategy in place in school climate that address that. What I want to clarify too, though, is that the action steps, maybe where we see more detailed things about what the district will be doing as related to that process, what I would anticipate you would expect to see in August on the 23rd is it would outline the district will have a strategy, and it would be more articulate than what we've written there.
This is more of an overview, and that's what I just wanted to thank you for having that as an individual item on there. I know how important that is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hammond, I did have one question.
Yes.
And by the way, I really love what you've done here and the nice structure of it all. The question I have is going back to the list of participants. I guess I have a 2-part question. I'm assuming that will be the same list that works on the strategies?
No, ma'am. Our intention there is to vary it up, and what we're doing now is we're identifying the leaders of each group for the next phase of this, which is strategy development and strategy writing, where we'll be building off of the work of the committees, where we, of course, have the strategies that are written, are identified. For example, school climate has the 5. We want to see those incorporated in the next phase of things. Student achievement, for example, only has the 2 identified areas right now that we want to see a strategy written on. So what's going to happen is this phase of the work gets turned over to a different leader of each group. So there'll be a student achievement leader, school climate leaders, teacher administrator quality leaders, who will then bring together new folks to work on the strategy development. Those folks have not been identified yet. We are currently, our timeline right now is that this week we're finalizing who will be leading each of those groups as we go forward, and then identifying who will be involved in that process for the district.
Okay, so my part 2 was I was just kind of curious. I know maybe elementary school is too young to do this, but when we get into climate and strategies, might we include some students?
That's always a possibility. That's,
Okay.
that's the board preference, and we've
All right.
done that. I think we see schools do that with their SICs and different involvement that we see with the school level feedback on their strategic plans, and that's certainly a possibility here as well.
And we also include student advisory, which is inclusive of high school representatives from all schools, including the center, with that process as well.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. We appreciate that. No other questions, and we don't need to approve that, Dr. Melton said.